it is about that time where I finally share with you the birth, labor, and delivery story of our baby girl. Baby girl is on the playmat right here, so if you hear some coos or babble, that is what it is. She's just playing on the mat while mommy shares the story of having her. It was an amazing experience. I had truly a very fast labor and uncomplicated labor. So I had been having a couple of false contractions and even some false signs and false labor a few weeks leading up to her actual birth. In fact, it was only about a week prior that we had a hospital scare that I thought my water had broke, which now that I actually know what water breaking feels like, I was wrong, very, very wrong. But we had a couple of scares. So we had been to the hospital labor and delivery room a couple of times before, so we kind of already knew what to expect, which was nice. And we had already met the team as well, so that is a positive in having to go to the labor and delivery room more than once. This is Calliope Eden, everyone. She was born on June 23rd and was born at about 7:21 p.m. It was a very quick labor. We got there around like 10 a.m. and had her fairly quickly, way quicker than I was expecting. She was ready to come out. She was ready to join the world. But let's track back to the day leading up to her birth, the day before. I'm going to put out a little warning that there's going to be some TMI when it comes to some of the signs I was having up into birth, and also after the birth. So if you are squeamish or don't want to hear about those things, it's probably not the video for you. But I know that when I was pregnant, I was watching tons of labor and delivery videos that just kind of helped comforted me on what to expect, what could not happen, what could happen, and not to scare myself, but just to prep myself on what things to look out for and to be aware of that are okay and not scary as well. So I had actually lost my whole mucus plug the week prior and had a bloody show, which wasn't what it sounds like. It was just like I was having a light period, but it wasn't normal blood, if that makes sense. It was definitely not normal. So I had that literally the day before I had her. So that was an incredible sign. I just had a feeling she was just around the corner. So I kept a mommy diaper on, postpartum diaper, just because I had a fear of wetting the bed or not being prepared if my water broke, and just, I don't know, I just wanted to be prepared. So the day before, I didn't have any contractions. I had normal Braxton Hicks, but nothing crazy. She had definitely dropped completely in my tummy, was in my pelvis area. I could feel her, I practically could feel her head. Like I knew she was low. So that was definitely interesting. That same week, my body was expelling everything that was entering my body, which I also was like, okay, this is a sign that labor is definitely near because my body is prepping for me to have space to deliver her. So I almost had a lot of flu symptoms, a lot of fatigue, I was emptying everything known to mankind from my body. I will say the pre-labor poos are real. That is a real thing. Her due date was the day after she was born. So I knew once we passed the due date, I would have to get induced. And I did not want to have to go through the process of being induced with her. I wanted to be natural because I heard some just crazy stories about being induced. And I, not that everyone's experience was like that. I just didn't want to have that, of course. But whatever had to happen to have her safely here, I would have done. And then the morning of June 23rd, it was about 7 a.m. and I woke up like minutes before my water broke. Like my body was waking me up and I felt like a pop in my abdominal area. And I felt it, and then I felt this warm sensation down under, and I was laying in bed and I went, oh my God. I have heard of women saying that they felt a strange like popping sensation before their water broke. And I just knew instantly that's what it was. I don't know, I knew that's what I had felt. I very quietly woke up Jacob and told him, hey, my water broke. And we had a couple of water break scares, so he was very much like, are you sure? Like, really? And I was like, oh yeah, can you get me a towel? Because I was so like, I'm not gonna wet this bed. That is not gonna happen. He had woken up so fast when I said my water broke. He went and woke up his mom because she was staying with us at the time, and got a towel for me. I also asked him to get me another postpartum diaper just in case. We had all the things. So then I went to the restroom, and the walk to the restroom was crazy because every step I took, there was a gush. And that's how it was until we got into the hospital, labor and delivery room, and I was in the bed. Every step I had taken, every movement, there was more and more water. It wasn't like it all came out at once. It was slowly but surely emptying. So then we got ready. We already had all the bags packed from our many trips to the hospital already. My waters were clear, which was a good sign, but I did call my midwife and let her know, and she told me to come on in, make sure I ate something, take my time, but also don't take too much time. When we got to the door, I had the most painful contraction that started them all. They were every minute or so apart and were very, very, very extreme. So then we got checked in, and I got checked to see if my waters had broke. They absolutely had. So we were then told that we would be staying at the hospital and having a baby. And I will never forget that moment of finally hearing that it was time. Finally hearing that it was time to have our baby for the third time being in the hospital felt amazing for both Jacob and I. I was having contractions between 1 to 2 minutes apart the whole time. And they were very, very, very extreme and painful. But then it was go time. So they constantly check you throughout the hospital to make sure you are progressing. Because if not, then they do have to induce you in a way with some sort of medication that allows you to progress and to dilate. So in the beginning, I had dilated to a 2 when I entered the hospital, just under 2 maybe. And but I was like 80% effaced. It was really odd. It was quite odd. And so I was checked pretty much every hour to 2 hours or so by the midwife team and the nurses, and they were so sweet. They were such darlings, and they made sure we were comfortable. So when it came to the birth plan, we did state that we wanted to do an epidural if need be. However, I really wanted to see how far I could get without it in a safe manner, to where it wouldn't be too late to have it, or if I had to do maybe some laughing gas. But at this point, I was progressing too fast that my body couldn't keep up with it. And I have MS and multiple sclerosis, which is what MS is. And my body was just going into almost like a shock. I was feeling like I was gonna pass out. I was in tears. So I knew it was time to request the epidural. So 1 is when I asked for it. 1:30 is when they started prepping it. And I wanna say it was closer to 2 is when they first gave me the epidural. Now, I did not feel the shot of the epidural. I was in so much pain, and having to worry about sitting still in that pain was the hardest thing. I didn't care about the needle. I didn't care about what they were putting in my back. I was so focused on what they said of not moving, because it could jack up your whole spine. You could be paralyzed if you move during this whole procedure. And I'm in double over in pain, right? But then I realized that after about 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, I couldn't feel my left side of my body, but I was still in excruciating pain on the right side of my body. So I let them know, and they said there was a possibility that it could numb half my body and not the full amount, and that they would have to readjust it or do it again. So I let them know that I was still doubly over in pain. And so they said, okay. They got the anesthesiologist to come in, and then they gave me a second dose of the epidural. So I was fully drugged. And I will say the one thing I didn't like about that was that I didn't know how drugged I'd be, and also I wasn't spoken to about the risks with how that would be with my heart and my MS, because we truly didn't know how things were going to react to my body or how my body would react to these things. So come to think of it, I'm glad everything went okay, but I do wonder how dangerous it was to double dose me as well. So I will say be very careful and ask a lot of questions, or have someone ask you questions there if you have any sort of medical diagnoses in any way, shape, or form. So they gave me the second dosage. I couldn't even lift my legs. I couldn't feel from like my pelvis down. So when they're like, okay, so you're fine on, the epidural now, we're going to be turning you kind of like a rotisserie chicken every 30 minutes to make sure baby's heart rate stays even. So I was on each side and being rocked like a boat. And so that was about 3 p.m. is when I officially was feeling drugged up and feeling very good and wasn't feeling any pain. So I was feeling wonderful, but I was told that if I felt any pressure down below to let them know, because that would mean that it would be time, and I was progressing very quickly. So they knew it would be by the evening, by nighttime, I'd be having this baby. But I was worried because I couldn't feel anything. So how would I know if it was time as well? And it was about, 6:30 is when, maybe it was more 6 p.m. I got checked, and I was at 9, I'll never forget this, 9 3/4 dilated and like 95% effaced. And so I remember sending a text to the group chat telling them, my whole family, that I was at 9 3/4. It was almost go time. I remember sending so many memes of Harry Potter, and we will never forget that she was almost a 9 3/4 baby. I knew it could be any moment. And so I was watching her heart rate monitor like a hawk. I had my whole body faced towards it, and that's what I was using to help me know what was going on. And then I could have swore I felt the sensation of something in my back and like pushing in a way. And I knew it was her, and I saw that her heart rate on the monitor was acting wonky. And I didn't like that. So Jacob went and got a nurse, and it took him a bit to come back there, which kind of annoyed me because I was like, her heart rate is going wonky. I don't like that. So they finally came back and they checked me, and they're like, no, I wasn't 10 centimeters, but I was still kind of like that 9 3/4 mark, but she was ready to come. So that is when it's go time. And originally they told us that we could only have the father and one guest in the room, and we begged them to let both of our moms be in the room, just because it was a huge room and it was only one more person, and they were literally, both of our moms were just our rocks the whole time and supporting us and wanted to be there, which the lovely team allowed them to do so. So that was amazing having both of them be there. I do regret not going to labor and delivery classes, which train you with the breathing. I have a form of an acute respiratory lung disease on top of all my other bullcrap. And I could definitely feel it in the moment when I was having to breathe, but also hold my breath and push for long periods of time. I was feeling lightheaded. It was hard for me to do so at the time intervals that they wanted, but I somehow did it. And baby girl was born within minutes of, I think it felt like it was super short, but it also did go for about 20 minutes. So we started about 7 p.m. It took about 20 minutes for her to be born. I remember at one point, even though I was a bit loopy, I do remember that all the nurses and the midwives were talking about how much hair she had. She was born with more hair than you see now. And they were laughing and making so many funny jokes about it. And closer to her being born, and we noticed that her heart rate was dropping. And the midwife did tell me she was going to cut me and perform the cut so I wouldn't tear. But then baby's heart rate started acting wonky, and she told me I just had to push. So unfortunately, I got pretty much the worst tear that you could get, all the way up, including a perennial tear. So the recovery, as you can imagine, was not pleasant. But she came out, and I guess according to my moms, our moms, the cord was wrapped around Calliope's like arm and shoulder, and I was also born that way, and so was my brother, hence why her heart rate was acting off towards the end and it was dropping. So they undid the umbilical cord. I was listening purely. I was listening for just that cry to know she was okay. And she came out and she started crying, and they put her on my chest, and she had her little ooh-ah cry, and I was just in tears and just so relieved that she was healthy and breathing. So Jacob got to cut the umbilical cord, which was also on our birth plan, and that was an amazing moment for him. And literally the moment she was on my chest, she started lifting her head. Her eyes were wide open, these big blue eyes, and we were like, oh my God, she's like lifting her neck up and turning her head, and it was crazy. On top of that, the midwives and the nurses were all guessing her weight, and I remember the term, the units of 10 pounds being stated, and that was crazy to me. Apparently they were all guessing that she was going to be really big, and I thought she would have been really small, but I was in shock when they said 10 pounds. I was like, there's no way. But when they measured her, she was just under 9 pounds. Thank God. She was 8 pounds, 13 ounces, still a very big baby. But my brother was 9 pounds, so my mom was in shock as well, being like, oh my God, your first baby was that big. But she was very healthy, and we are just so in love. Like I said, the labor and delivery experience was amazing. I couldn't be more happy and pleased. And you know what? I would do it again. Happily, I would do it again. Couple of different ways, mind you, but I would definitely go through it again if it meant bringing this bundle of joy and love into the world like we did. I know a lot of women out there have had very scary, very traumatic, very negative birth experiences, and everyone's journey and story of birth is different. And I'm purely sharing my story as a first-time mom who didn't know what to expect, who was watching tons of YouTube videos and vlogs. I felt comforted knowing that I had an idea of what could happen, and that yes, anything could happen, but I felt more prepared than I did without knowing. So that is why I am sharing with you guys my story. But if you guys got this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button down below. But I will leave it at that, and I will see you guys all in the next video.